injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Hello, everybody.
Alrighty, Fish on First, presented to you by Berger and Hicks. My name is Kevin Barral, and I'm here with Eli Sussman, Alex Krutchik, and Zach Letson. Late night stream, probably the latest one of the season for us. Probably the only late one we'll have this year. But series for the Marlins against the San Francisco Giants. They begin a 3-game set. Adam Oller on the mound against Blake Snell. But before that, let's go back and take a look at what was a series split for the Marlins against the Colorado Rockies. Interesting series for sure. We were able to see some of Max Meyer. We got Edward Cabrera looks. Valente Belloso, Roderick Munoz struggled, ended up getting sent down. Eli, just take us through the series. A lot of good, a lot of bad. Griffin Conine is probably the highlight of this series for many with how good he was. And then Kyle Sowers also really showed up for this series too.
Yeah, let me start with Conine because that was the big story right here where he gets called up right the night before this road trip starts. And his dad, Jeff, is there for the whole series, along with his mom as well, both his dad and his mom, and some of his close buddies, including Arm Layden of Just Baseball. And they were all in the same, the broadcast crew made sure to pan to them as often as possible to get their reactions to every single thing that Conine was doing. And there was more good than bad. I think overall it was a fine first impression. He started 3 of the 4 games. And we got a pretty clear picture of him as an overall player. There was the top end power that makes him really appealing. A ball that he hit 415 feet to left center that would have been a home run almost anywhere else. Another extra base hit. Aside from that, there were some deep counts that he was able to work. He showed off his arm in right field, one of the better outfield assists that we've seen recently. It was Dane Myers-like kind of throw that cut down a run and actually proved to be pretty consequential. And then in the final game, we really got the whole picture. The Marlins went off for 18 hits. That's a season high. And he had none of them. He was in the whole game. He went 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. So on a day where everybody else went off in that lineup, from like Kyle Stowers to Derek Hill having a multi-home run game to Ali Sanchez having 3 hits and 2 stolen bases, everybody in that lineup went off except for Conine in that final game. The overall numbers from the 4 games for Conine, let me make sure I have this right. He went 3 for 13 with a 747 OPS overall with 4 strikeouts in those 4 games. I thought it was pretty representative of who he is as a player and some of the questions, but also some of the really enticing qualities that he has that made him worth bringing up in the first place.
Yeah, definitely good stuff from Mr. Jeff Conine. Krutchik, I want to go to you, talking a little bit about Derek Hill, who ended up having 2 home runs. He looked really good this series. You know, definitely trying to make the case to stick around at least for most of 2025 in some sort of role. What you like from Mr. Derek Hill, Alex Krutchik?
Well, he's certainly going to be a very fun trivia question in a future Marlins Jeopardy. Probably one of the most random guys to ever have a multi-home run game for the Marlins. Definitely the most random guy to have multiple multi-home run games for the Marlins. Yeah, he's been a fine 5th outfielder, 4th outfielder for the Marlins since being called up. I think that the Marlins, I think a lot of these Band-Aid guys that they've brought up, even the position players, have earned themselves at least like a look in spring training. I wouldn't put him in any opening day roster projections, but I certainly think that if he continues playing this way, there he is. Look at him. And he looks just enough like Dane Myers to fool some people, so that's a great replacement that Peter Bendix brought in. He was like, we'll just put a hat on him, maybe some sunglasses. People will think that Dane Myers is still out there. Dane Myers, by the way, is doing baseball activities. He should be back relatively soon. But no, yeah, Derek Hill, to round it out, he's been doing pretty good in the role that he has, and I'm excited to see if he can continue doing it for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely got to, it's been a fun watch for sure. The Grand Slam, I had a couple homers. He's been serviceable for sure. He's been playing almost every day. So definitely a good fit at the moment. Gets to play his former team tonight against the San Francisco Giants. But Zach, let's talk a little bit about the two guys the Marlins got in the trade deadline, Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby. Norby, once again, 10-game hit streak, trying to make it 11 tonight. Let's hope he does it. And then you have Kyle Stowers, who, after struggling a lot to get the season going, finally getting it going, in Colorado of all places, but you'll take that over the strikeouts. Just what stood out to you about those two guys so far?
I mean, the Baltimore boys have been raking. I think Connor Norby coming up, and you talk about that hitting streak, but not just the consistency in terms of coming in and getting a hit in 10 straight games. To have 8 extra base hits over that stretch, I think is really impressive to come in and do that as quickly as he can. I think it's kind of just a sign for Marlins fans that the future offensively is a little closer than it might seem, kind of like that side mirror in your car where it says the future may be a little closer than it appears. But Connor Norby, I think, has been a really pleasant surprise offensively. I mean, we knew the guy could hit, but to come up and to produce the way he has so quickly has definitely been a pleasant surprise. And Connor Norby's offensive success, kind of by association, has, I think, helped Kyle Stowers shift some gears. Obviously, he was off to a little bit of a cold start there when he got his first hacks in the major leagues. But that 4 RBI game on Sunday was huge for Stowers. I thought he had a great series, and he's kind of had his best short little stretch, only about a 4 or 5 game sample. But offensively, he's kind of looking like a little different of a player from those maybe first couple game jitters with the Marlins when he was striking out a lot and hitting under 200. I think now you're finally starting to see a little more. And obviously not a ton to go off of, right? But just talking about this series in the last 4 or 5 games, he's turned a little bit of a corner there.
Eli, I also want to talk to you quickly about Norby on the defensive side of things. He's actually looked pretty good at third base. What are you seeing there? I know he had mentioned he wanted to be a second baseman. He believes he's a second baseman, but when you have some Otto Lopez there and soon to be Xavier Edwards at second base, Norby's arm is pretty good. I like, he's looking good there at third base for the most part. It seems like a pretty natural fit at the moment.
Well, he actually did play one game at second base on Wednesday of this series.
Yes.
And coincidentally, he made an error in that one game. He has not made an error in any of his games at third base. He did make one at second base so far. Yeah, I think if you take it all into consideration, he might be an average third baseman, or at least close to that. So you couldn't really tell the difference in this small sample so far. There have been a couple plays, as he even admits to, where the reaction time has to be a lot quicker at third base. There have been at least one that shot right by him, but I feel like that might have been actually in the previous homestand, even before this series, a ball that got to him a little too quickly and into the outfield behind him overall. And then there have been a couple throws that weren't exactly on line, but I wouldn't say that arm strength is an issue, more so just the consistency of those throws to make sure they're really easy to receive on the other end. Like, he fakes it just fine right there. And just considering the alternatives they have on the roster right now, it's Jake Berger and it's Jonah Bride. He might be better at the position than those guys are, all things considered. When you compare it to that, it makes it more important and more valuable that he's able to at least show that versatility to do that right now. Yeah, overall, it's been fine. We've seen with other players, it's not that uncommon for when you're playing a position you're either not comfortable with or don't really enjoy playing. It sometimes does bleed into other aspects of your game. It sometimes does make it harder for you to focus on hitting the way that you're supposed to. And in all things considered, it sometimes brings down your overall game. The fact that it clearly has not affected him at the plate whatsoever, that he's been able to let me see if I can get this right, compartmentalize between the defense and the offense right there. That in itself is kind of impressive right here. So it's kind of besides the point to me whether he becomes really polished at third base, more so that as long as he's able to hit, that is going to be so far and away the most important thing for this team. So far, so good when it comes to that aspect of it.
And then finally, taking a look at the pitching, it was definitely a little bit rougher than I think we all expected, or, more expected than we thought. Krutchik, we start with, I believe it was Edward that first game. looked good all the way up until the end. I believe you were on the recap for that game. Game 2 is Roderick Munoz start, not very good at all. Ended up getting him over to AAA Jacksonville. Game 3 was Max Meyer, and then the final one was Valente Belloso. So just your overall thoughts on the pitching, definitely pretty rough, but Max Meyer looked all right. Edward looked pretty good for the most part up until the end. So at least some positives to kind of take away there. I mean, I know we're kind of going all the way, trying to find whatever we can at this point to talk about, pitching and cores. But yeah, definitely some good things to take away.
Yeah, so Edward Cabrera, by batting average, continued his troubling trend of being very bad against lineups a third time through. A lot of pitchers struggle more so the third time through as opposed to the first time through, but even compared to other pitchers, Edward Cabrera is bad. Now, Skip had alluded to the fact that, it was Coors Field. He only gave up 3 runs. He only gave up 1 home run. And he's right. Edward Cabrera gave up 6 hits to Rockies batters the second and third time through. Only one of those hits was an extra base hit. It wound up being a home run. So he did good by limiting the slug in a ballpark like that. So hats off to him for that. But he's still allowing there we go. He's still not looking sharp the third time through a lineup, and that's also when the walks came. The first time through, he didn't walk anybody. He was perfect, actually, the first time through. 3 up, 3 down. Sorry, 9 up, 9 down. If he continues that trend even at ballparks that are not Coors, that would be a good sign to send him to the bullpen next year. At least think about it during spring training. Roderick Munoz, that was awful. I do think that he has done things to limit his home run issues. I still think that he's not the best pitcher, of course, and I still think that he has home run issues even with fixing his pitch tipping problem. But the issues are still there a little bit. And then pitching in Coors Field for him was just a mixture of terrible factors for him. He gave up 2 home runs to the first 2 Rockies batters that night, and then it didn't get any better from there.
Yeah. We should just clarify for people that he is now out of the rotation, got sent down to the minors, which is a big change after he'd been a staple, for better or worse, in this rotation for almost 2 months now. But finally, this is what compelled him to pull the plug, and he's not expected to come back before the end of the year.
Yeah. It's a shame too, and part of that I believe is because of the amount of innings that he's thrown. He's hitting his career high, but also part of it's performance. But I do think it's mostly the innings, just because the performance thing hasn't stopped him from trotting out other bad pitchers this year with where the season is right now and where the record is right now. Max Meyer went out there, pitched okay, wasn't helped out by his defense back there. He's another guy who we need to see more from his fastball. He's got a very good slider, but the slider won't do much if you can't set it up with a really good fastball. And even when you could set it up with a really good fastball, you can't keep throwing 2 pitches over and over again for 6 innings and be successful. He's got to work on that changeup, work on that 2-seamer. It doesn't seem like it improved a whole lot down in the minors. For those that think that he should be sent to the bullpen right now, I do think it's worth mentioning that this is his first season back from Tommy John. And even before that, he only pitched 2 major league games before getting injured. I would like to see one more full offseason for him, a full spring training, and then probably a couple months next year to see if he's gotten any development on those pitches. But yeah, for now, not looking very sharp.
All righty, let's move on to September call-ups. I believe they're going to happen this Sunday. Rosters expand from 26 to 28. And there's a lot of flash names in the Marlins minor league system, but I think the most fair assessment, and Eli, I'll go to you first, is they will reinstate Xavier Edwards off the IL, which will give him that spot. And they will probably get some random pitcher from AAA Jacksonville just to have an extra arm, which honestly they really need one, so it doesn't hurt. But then there is the option, which I think we've been mentioning a little bit more of, which was why not give Adam Mazur a shot? He was traded from the Padres in that Tanner Scott trade, comes over to Miami, looks really good, gets off to a little shaky start, but recently, man, he has been on it and definitely, it was more or less kind of feels like that same track record that Ryan Weathers was on when he got here to Miami. Got some time in AAA towards the back half of the season is when he really came up. I think they would be calling up Mazur a little bit earlier than they did with Weathers, but certainly, if he's on it, you want to bring that up and you want to get 5-6 innings, which honestly right now they need more than anything with the amount of relievers they've been using recently.
Yeah. So to clarify, Sunday is the day that rosters expand. Edwards is not eligible to come off the IL until like the day after, until they return home. And then with Mazur, we'll get into him in a moment, he's going to need an extra day to get on regular rest again. Sunday is when the Munoz rotation spot was going to come up. And it can't be Mazur. That's why I have a question mark next to Xavier Curry, who was called up a couple of days ago. And he's not being listed as a starter for Sunday. He would seem to be the leading candidate for it by default. They need to figure out a way to patch together that first game, September 1st, before Mazur comes up and without Munoz, of course, right there. So the intriguing question is exactly what this looks like when they return home for that series starting on Tuesday in Miami. I do fingers crossed that Edwards is ready to come back by then. We're still waiting like another update on how close he is to overcoming that back injury scare that he had. With Mazur, he already has big league experience. It didn't go very well with the Padres earlier this year, and the Marlins assigned him to AAA upon acquiring him at the trade deadline in that Tanner Scott deal. I don't think the expectation was that he would pitch in the majors this year. It's just that now they just have so few other alternatives right now. And more importantly, he is shoving his last 2 outings. Combined, last 2 times he has taken the mound, he has allowed 4 base runners in 2 starts. It's been close to perfection in both of those outings. Only 3 total hits in those 2 starts. 13 strikeouts and 0 walks during that span. He looks really good. He just looks like a very polished version of, probably more polished than we thought at the time, where he commands his stuff really well. He gets a lot of swings and misses, especially on his slider. So he looks ready to at least be tested over this final stretch right here. As I said, he's not going to be rested enough to pitch on Sunday, on the first day that rosters expand on September 1st. I would hope that as soon as they come back to Miami that he is added to that rotation and that he gets his shot to stick in that rotation. With no disrespect to Valente Beozo and what he did before his recent slump, I think Mazur not only should go into this rotation, but he should take priority over a couple guys that are in there right now, with Beozo being probably the most likely one, as he seems to be regressing rapidly to the guy that we thought he was. So with Mazur, at this point, I'd honestly be surprised if he isn't called up just because of the lack of alternatives right now. And he has just very quickly made some tweaks to his game that seems to have very little left to learn in the minors at this point.
I'll go to you, Zach. We have to talk about Davis and De Los Santos and Agustin Ramirez, just 2 guys who are making the case to honestly, come up during this time in September, at least towards the back half of the season, late. No, and there we go. We get the question right on time. De Los Santos has proven it. I don't think he has much more to do in minor league baseball, except maybe just cut down on the strikeouts a little bit. But I think it's been pretty manageable, I think, for the most part, I want to say, at least. I haven't checked those numbers recently. But Ramirez is another guy who is obviously the safer profile. He's been hitting a lot better. The power's there. Just what are your thoughts on those 2 guys? Do you see a world where they're up at some point? I don't think it'll be September 1st, unfortunately, but there is a good shot that, you also have to add De Los Santos to the 40 man. So you may as well get that done now, sooner rather than later.
I think De Los Santos is a no-brainer to add for a September call-up. Looking at the numbers, obviously, how he started with Arizona in AA and then AAA. But even as you look at his numbers with Jacksonville, over an 820 OPS, the power's still there with the home runs. It makes a lot of sense to give a guy like that a shot who's already got those numbers, already has over a 960 OPS on the year, and he's only 21 years old. Why not give him a shot? I think that would make a lot of sense. And Ramirez, like you said, he's a little more of a safer option, but I think that would both make a lot of sense as someone players that you want to see on this Marlins team. And again, looking towards the future, and we've already seen a couple of those guys come up in Stowers and Norby and already start to produce. Why wouldn't you want those players to get that opportunity? I think it would be a no-brainer, especially De Los Santos and the way that he's been just crushing the baseball wherever he's been, at whatever level he's been. at his young age has been especially impressive. So I think it's no brainer for the Marlins.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, so let's move on to talk a little bit about. You were going to say something, Eli?
Yeah, before moving, let's not totally move on. I think what I want to point out there is, where is De Los Santos going to play when they call him up? Because he's a first baseman / emergency third baseman. Right now, the way that they have it, it's Jonah Bride, it's Jake Berger, and Connor Norby. Between those three, it's the DH spot, the first base spot, and the third base spot. With Connor Norby, he's going to keep playing every day. And with Berger, he's going to keep playing every day. And with Jonah Bride, people are preying on his downfall, and it has not happened yet. He continues to be like surprisingly solid. He continues to be like a slightly above average hitter. He continues to be a dark horse series MVP pick for this upcoming series, but I will not give too much away, even though I already did right there. Like, that's the complication in here. Is Jonah Bride is the guy standing in the way of making this happen. He of course has minor league options left. They could send him down, and because of the expanded roster, they could bench him altogether or just make him a pinch hitter, I suppose. I fear, from the perspective of most fans that are hoping to see De Los Santos, that Bride has just been a little bit too good to totally relegate to a limited role, because I think they want to get an honest, as much information as possible to gather from having him play games, in terms of whether he's actually part of their 2025 playing mix one way or another. As much as De Los Santos is obviously the priority long term, with Bride, it's just been enough well-rounded, consistent hitting that I would be surprised if they bring up De Los Santos at this point. But as I said, the alternative is, if they're willing to put Bride on the bench and feel like they have seen enough and they already know who he is, then maybe they do it. Maybe they surprise me in that regard. I think the more likely scenario is that De Los Santos stays at AAA. And even though he's producing really well, there are some things he could still hone in terms of his pitch selection, what he's swinging at, trying to be a little bit more disciplined. You can make the case either way, that maybe he's ready to be tested at the next level, and maybe he has to fail at the next level. And that would ultimately be in his best long-term interest. But this just goes back to Jonah Bride. I think he's the one guy that they wasn't really top of mind a month ago when they made that trade to get De Los Santos, and that he has just been interesting enough that they might want to use September to get a read on him at the big league level instead of De Los Santos, as crazy as that seems kind of on the surface.
Jonah Bride has been blocking careers, man. First Troy Johnston, and now potentially Davis and De Los Santos. But I think we can move on real quick and talk about minor league player of the year. That's something that the Marlins do every year. I wanted to bring this up because we're kind of coming to the end of a couple of these minor league seasons. I believe low A is wrapping up, and I also want to say high A as well. So we got some reasoning to talk about some of these players. And honestly, I see it as a three-man race between Javier Sanoja, Joe Mack, and Ryan Ignafo. I think those are three guys who have really stood out, been really, really good. And even Eli had the graph already, so I'm glad I nailed that right on. So Eli,
Yes.
Talk to us about all three guys. You're a Joe Mack believer. You're a big Joe Mack guy, so we could start with him. Then we can talk about the other two guys. Unfortunately, Alex Carver's in here to talk about Ryan Ignafo, but one of our great panelists could do that for us.
Yes, I'm glad we're on the same page there. We did not consult this ahead of time, but I picked out these three that have distinguished themselves from the group. And it also means that I have to backtrack on my previous take, which was that it was down to two guys. I thought it was just Joe Mack and Javier Sanoja neck and neck. And then Ryan Ignafo, who just continues to rake. He's hitting 335 this year over the course of a full season as a catcher. That's something that may surprise people. He has caught more games this year than Joe Mack has. And this is almost a brand new position for him, whereas Mack is a primary catcher. But because of all the time that Mack is DHing as well, kind of splitting time between those spots, Ignafo is the one that really shockingly is maintaining that level of offensive prowess while also going through the mental and physical grind of catching. It's been Ignafo is the one that has really come out of nowhere. Whereas with both these guys, Mack and Sanoja, they were on our radars entering this year. And to their credit, they have also exceeded their own expectations. Sanoja has kind of come back down to earth himself over the last few weeks. I think the sexy thing about him a few weeks ago was that he was hitting over 300 at AAA. If I could pull this up now, I think he's now significantly below that, as he as is to be expected. It was kind of a surprise in the first place that he has seamlessly made that big jump after being somebody that was in the lower levels of the system just a year ago, 21 years old. That's what's interesting, is that Snoha and Mac are both a couple of years younger than Ignafo is, and they're playing at a higher level. Ultimately, a tiebreaker in most of these cases is that actual prospect pedigree, where you want to compare these guys on a performance level. You want it to come down to, you want to be independent of those other factors and just be about who did the best. But at the end of the day, if it's close, it usually just goes to the one that they think is actually going to be the more legitimate prospect or the more impactful guy long term. And with Ignafo, there's still some questions, some serious questions about that. He was the guy that was one of their last picks in the draft a year ago. He almost went undrafted last year coming out of college, which unfortunately puts him at a disadvantage unless he really is lapping the field in regard to everybody else. My prediction is that Mac is the one that wins this one out. 24 home runs, even as a guy that is DHing quite a bit, for someone who's primarily a catcher to have that much power, to also have some good plate discipline, to be doing it while facing a lot older competition. To me, that is the most impressive thing. Like, of these guys, I think he's the one that has most legitimized himself as a potential everyday player at the major league level in the future, just based on that combo of power and discipline and doing it at a premium position, at least in most of the games that he's playing. He is not faded. You would have thought there've been some streakiness. He was way up in June. He was way down in July, and now August is kind of in the middle right there. But overall, he's kept it up in a way that I think has exceeded everybody's expectations.
Yeah, Krojcik, I want to go to you here real quick, because last year we were talking about this catching position overall, organizationally, and it was Nick Fortes and Jacob Stallings, and 2025, we very well may be talking about Joe Mack potentially, if he makes that roster, and Agustin Ramirez. Just how refreshing is that, that you're going from two guys who just unfortunately just aren't very good offensively. Well, Jacob Stallings is impressive, but, with the Marlins, and going to two guys who, Joe Mack, who is an all right catcher, Ramirez has a lot of work to do behind the plate. And, especially now in this award race, you have two guys that are catchers. Just how refreshing is it to see, these catchers finally finding success, what was one of the worst positions organizationally now turning into more of a strong suit for the most part.
Yeah, you said it. Like, one of the things that I loved about the deadline was getting more bats into the organization. I loved the pickup of Agustin Ramirez, but you kind of touched on it. Like, is he a catcher? Like, if he can actually figure out how to catch even at an average level or even just a merely below average level, his bat will sustain him. And that gets me very excited. I just don't know if he will, especially since up until now, and I know it's a different development team, but up until now, the Marlins aren't exactly the beacon of hope for catchers. They're not exactly like, they haven't had a Mel Stottlemyre for their catchers here, where a guy comes in, he's not good, but the Marlins will fix him. He's not good at most of the things that are required of a catcher. Like, he throws hard, but he's not very good at receiving, blocking, framing, like the actual catching part of it. If he can figure out how to do that, then it would be fantastic. As for Joe Mack, I mean, you guys have had more eyes on Joe Mack than I have, but based on everything that I've seen in the box scores and highlights and things that you guys have told me, it is nice that they do seem to have options, and I hope that he gets a look in spring training next year, like a real good look.
So if you had to make your pick right now, Krojcik, who is your minor league player of the year? And then I'll go with Zach with that same question.
I do think it's Joe Mack, just because I'm so excited that there is a catcher worth talking about. Yeah, that's pretty much my reasoning for that.
There we go. All right, Zach, who's your pick?
I'll lean Mac as well, just because of what he's done at the AA level. And I mean, the power numbers speak for themselves, but Ryan Ignafo and the way that he's hit and consistently hit, I mean, hitting 335 on the season. And he's kind of been a guy for a while who I've watched going back to like his summer ball days in New England. He's always been a guy who that batting average is going to carry a lot of weight, and it's always been one of his strengths. So a pleasant surprise, but not something that shocked me. But I'll lean with Joe Mack in terms of my player of the year.
I threw up a Ryan Ignapo photo right there because I imagine most people watching this do not know what he looks like, but there he is. There's a closer
look. We have
look.
an interview with him at Fish on First, so you guys can check that out too.
That's right, from earlier this season.
We have a lot of Ryan Ignapo content somehow, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Joe Mack as much as I want to go with Sanoja. Joe Mack has just kept it up, and when he does catch, it's actually pretty good defensively. So he's been showing a lot of improvements offensively, And I will say, I was the one guy who said he should not be a top 30. I was out on Joe Mack, but I have been proven heavily wrong by Joe Mack. He has proven me wrong big time. So we're going to go into the break. But before that, quick flip fish. Seems like an easier one from what I saw on Instagram. So I'll let you take it away, Eli.
Yeah, I chose a guy that spent time with 8 different major league organizations, which I would not have guessed before double checking that. I think it is relatively easier than usual right here. Going with an outfielder who played for both the Marlins and the Giants, as we do with every series, picking someone that spent some time with both. Give you a better look at this. From New Mexico originally, stuck around for parts of 12 or 13 major league seasons. The overall production slightly above average as a hitter. And he had some notable stretches with both of these franchises, the Marlins and the Giants. So take a closer look right there. We'll go to our break. On the other side, the big reveal, a little bit more about this upcoming series. We'll get to the rest of your questions in the live chat. Stick with us here on FOF Live.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Alrighty, we're back.
We could have gone with Benito Santiago because this was Marlins and Giants series. You're not aware, Kevin. He did play for the Giants before going to the Marlins. But this one is not Benito Santiago. This one is Cody Ross. Who spent longer with the Marlins than any other team during his career, traded over to the Giants in 2010, and then helped them win their World Series title down the stretch of that season.
Didn't he win either World Series MVP or NLCS MVP that year?
Absolutely. He was NLCS MVP for the Giants right there. He wasn't, I don't think he was even playing every day for them down the stretch, but that's how it goes more often than not, it seems, in postseason when those series pop up and a guy gets hot and all of a sudden he's playing every day and all of a sudden he's hitting crucial home runs right there. So Cody Ross is part of that long tradition of guys that were nothing special during most of their regular seasons, but then could actually be the most impactful guy in a postseason series to swing it in their direction.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the series between the Marlins and the Giants. I believe this is the latest start time of the season, 10:15 first pitch. Let's look into the starting pitching matchups. It'll be Adam Oller for the Marlins facing Blake Snell. I don't think anyone would have thought Adam Oller is a real person, but yes, he is. And he was actually pretty good last time out for the Marlins, going at 5 2/3 innings, only giving up 1 run, 1 earned, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. So that was against the Chicago Cubs. Eli, what worked for Adam Oller last time out? He was actually pretty solid as well, I believe, in AAA Jacksonville. So he was a guy who was claimed off of waivers by the Cleveland Guardians. And, he was solid. I don't think there's another way to put it. He was all right for the Marlins last time out. And, yeah.
His fastball command was very good. And that's important because he threw almost exclusively fastballs. It was, if I looked this up correctly, it was the second highest fastball percentage by any Marlins pitcher in any start this entire season. There was one Ryan Weathers start where he was really feeling his fastball and rode it heavily. Oller doesn't throw quite as hard as Weathers does. It's, a tick below major league average for a right-handed pitcher, but when he commands it really well, he can get ahead in counts and he can even get some swings and misses with it. It was a really impressive outing, and coming on the heels of a debut with the Marlins where it did not go particularly well at all. So for the moment, I should have referenced it earlier with the Adam Mazer possibility of getting called up, that with all due respect to Aller, Mazer is a guy that you would think would leapfrog him in the pecking order as well. And so with Aller is not by any means guaranteed a spot on this roster for the rest of the year. He still has to perform a little bit, which means that every single start, including this one, has a lot of pressure on him, both for this year and the ramifications for beyond moving forward. When he's struggled, it's just because he is not in favorable accounts. That's in his debut with the team and during his previous stretches in the majors, where he frankly failed for the most part when he was pitching for the Oakland A's. The walk rates were just way out of control. There were times where he was walking almost as many guys as he was striking out right there. He's somebody that needs to get in favorable accounts in order to put guys away, because he's fastball reliant, and overall it's really reliant on two pitches, his fastball and his slurve right there. You just don't see that a ton from starting pitchers to have success when they're mostly just two pitches in here, which means that, yeah, his ceiling is kind of limited as a pitcher. It's a big contrast between somebody like Blake Snell. When Blake Snell is on, he has 4 different pitches that are all nasty, that can all put batters away right there. So you could say very politely that this is a contrast of styles for this series opener between Aller and Blake Snell in every single way, in terms of who they are as pitchers and also their backgrounds, with Snell obviously being the reigning NL Cy Young Award winner and being one of the hottest pitchers in baseball if you go back over the last 2 months or so of this season.
Yeah, and then talking about Blake Snell, just got off to a late start this season, signed a little bit late with the Giants, and he threw a no-hitter this year too, so he's been on it lately as well. Krutchik talked to us a little bit about Blake Snell. He's a guy who doesn't go very deep into games, but when he's on it, as Eli said, he's very good, and he I believe he walks a lot of guys. I think that's the issue with him as well, so definitely an interesting pitcher, but he has been able to find success for 9 years now in the major leagues, and he has been very, very good. 2-time Cy Young Award winner, so the Marlins aren't facing no slouch tonight.
Yeah, no, you said it. Blake Snell got off to a late start, both literally and metaphorically. Did not begin on good terms in San Francisco, but his last 7 starts, he's got a 1.66 ERA. So the Marlins are catching him at a very bad time. And that streak started with the no-hitter. So he's shown you that he can go deep into games if everything's working for him, and if he limits the walks, if I'm Edward Cabrera, I'm picking Blake Snell's brain a little bit to see how he can be so good while walking so many guys. But anyway, he walks a lot of guys. If the Marlins can get to him early and maybe be patient and get to the bullpen, maybe they'll have a chance. But yeah, Blake Snell has been on one the last 7 starts. It's going to be a tough game for them.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't on one last start against the Mariners, where he only went 3 innings, didn't allow hits, still give up 2 runs, 2 earned, 6 walks, 5 strikeouts. But before that, I mean, he went 7 innings, only allowing 1 run, struck out 10, walked 2, 11 strikeouts before that. So it was one bad start, it looks like. So aside from that, it looks like it'll be Mason Black tomorrow for the Giants, and then after that, Logan Webb. So you'll get 2 really good pitchers, and I don't even know much about Mason Black, unfortunately. And then we'll see who the Marlins go with that 3rd game. But let's pull up those lineups. Unfortunately, no Griffin Conan in there, but let's look at this Giants team, which I don't think right now, I think they're still fighting for a wild card spot. They're somewhere around there. I think they're pretty much out of it at this point, just given their trade deadline movements, trading Soler, who we won't be seeing, obviously, in this series. But Eli, take us through this lineup. Top of the lineup certainly stands out with Helio Ramos, a former future Marlin, if you want to say. Could have been part of that Starlin Marte trade. He's been pretty good this year for the Giants, I think, playing almost every day.
I think he was a name that even came up in Giancarlo Stanton rumors way back in the day when he was still a teenager, if I remember that correctly. To clarify what you were talking about with them being in the race or not, 1.3% playoff odds according to Fangraphs.
Never mind.
So you're saying there's a little chance right there that they still have. It's been an interesting year for them overall. Ultimately not a successful year, the fact that they're basically out of it. But yeah, nonetheless, mildly interesting so far. The guy that you have to point to is Tyler Fitzgerald, coming out of nowhere, it seems, to be one of the most productive shortstops in all of baseball since he's got called up. He has not spent the whole season with the team, but it's been a combination of power and stolen bases that is on a pretty short list among players in all of baseball. And there's just a natural ability to hit to go along with it that has taken him to another level. And you see all the way on the right with the sprint speed, he is top of the scale in that category as well. Matt Chapman has had a pretty cool bounce back year of sorts, one of his better overall years since his days in Oakland, where he's still a great third base defender. And he's also crushing the ball, as you see right there, all the time. Just a constant stream of line drives that has him hitting in the middle of their lineup. Who we're not seeing tonight, but we may see at some point during the series, is old friend Gerard Encarnacion.
Yeah.
That was part of the thinking and why they traded Jorge Soler, is that Encarnacion does some of the same things, but not as an everyday player. They seem to be platooning him really like carefully, where he only is in there against lefties, it seems, or he only pinch hits against them. There was a stretch where he was playing every day, it seemed like in early August, but overall the performance has been not too great with him. So he's still on the team, he's still on the active roster, just not in a really prominent role for these guys right now. And it's an interesting mix of guys all the way at the bottom. Really, the bottom couple spots of this lineup, they're trying to mix in some younger players with Casey Schmidt, who's been up and down a few different times the last couple of years, and Grant McCray, who's a rookie, and Patrick Bailey. At times, it looks like he might be emerging as one of the best catchers in all of baseball. He is really good defensively. It's just been an inconsistent year for him offensively. He's come back down to earth quite a bit overall. It's a deep lineup. It's a deep team. It's just not one particular guy that truly frightens you at this point. And it's with a lot of aspects of this team, it just averages out to being a 500-ish team. There's a lot of interesting things that they do overall, but they're still searching for a true star player. Like for now, for the rest of this season at least, they have Blake Snell as one of the nastier pitchers in baseball when he's on. But otherwise, and I guess you could say the same about Logan Webb as well. This is a team where the star power is more concentrated in the rotation than it is in the lineup.
Well, looking at the other side for Miami, I think Isaac had told us in the private chat to expect this against Blake Snell. They're going with David Hensley, Christian Pache in the lineup towards the bottom there. The hot hitting Derek Hill's also in there with Jonah Bride, Jake Berger, Connor Norby at the top. So pretty encouraging stuff there. Krutchik, take us through the lineup for the Miami Marlins tonight.
Yeah, pretty much very similar lineup to what we've been seeing for the last couple of weeks. I'm excited to see what guys like Otto Lopez can do. He's a guy that I'm looking at just because I just loved following him in particular this season, and he's been getting hot the last couple of weeks, and he's a speedy, contact first kind of guy, and I feel like that plays well in this ballpark, so I'm excited to see that. I know Griffin Conine's not starting tonight, but I am excited to see what he can do in a ballpark like this when he does get in. I'm sure he'll get in at some point. I'm excited to see how guys like Kyle Stowers continue to play when they don't have the benefit of Coors Field. There's a lot to look at with this Marlins lineup. Like there's things that I'm very curious about with these guys. I'm curious to see if Connor Norby continues to give the same production here as he did in Denver.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's not much more to say about this lineup, Eli, unless there's something you or Zach want to point out.
Yeah, well, with Pache, I wonder. I had thought when they acquired him that he was likely to stick on this team the rest of the season. Now that you have, I think there's a lot of pressure on him to do something at the plate in order for that to be true, for him to actually stick around. They're not using him very often. He's not even starting against all lefties. It's not even a straight platoon. Like Derek Hill, in this small sample, I think you see that Derek Hill is a better baseball player than Pache is. Like Derek Hill has had some nice moments defensively, even though he doesn't come with quite the same reputation that Pache did. And even though he's older, and certainly offensively showing a lot more promise. Like the it made a very interesting push, as we saw in late July and early August, to claim everybody they can off of waivers, to totally fill up the shopping cart with all these guys. And I think we're reaching a point where they can feel comfortable making some decisions in terms of who is worth even keeping around for the entire month of September. Pache is on the hot seat. You could say David Hensley as well. Like Hensley is the same. He's been a pretty obvious bench player for them. At least he has minor league options. With Pache, he's out of options right now. So you're not really waiting for anything. He needs to actually show you something now in order for you to seem to be even mildly interested right here. And I just wonder if his days might be numbered as Dane Myers gets closer to being able to return and fill up that outfield a little bit more. And as Xavier Edwards, as we hope comes off the IL, that his playing time will be, you would think, even more diminished. Even Kyle Stowers, as we saw, he could fake it in center field, and they want to get Kyle Stowers in the lineup. Today being one of those two exceptions, that Stowers is going to be playing almost every day right here. So Pache, I think he is very much under the microscope with every game that he plays in order to show something that keeps the team mildly interested in him. Because if I'm just speaking on a personal level, in a small sample, I feel like I already understand why it is that his past couple teams were ready to move on from him and put him on the waiver wire in the first place.
Yeah, just bad decision making for the most part, especially with the fastball up. It feels like he swings at that every single time. But aside from that, I don't think there's too much more to dive into this lineup. We knew Cronin with that injury there. I think we could talk a little bit about the bullpen, which struggled a bit in Colorado, but was able to hold it down towards the end of that series. Zach, what have you liked about this bullpen? What do you think has been the issue with the bullpen? We know Cronin had that knee issue. Probably won't see him tonight, but this bullpen has been overused plenty this last series in Colorado. So I'm really curious as to how many guys are actually available for the Marlins tonight.
Yeah, I think that becomes the big question, just with how the Marlins, even in the games that they did win in that Colorado series, having to win a 9-8 game and having to win a 12-8 game. But in terms of positives for that bullpen, I think Tinoco and the way that he's pitched since the Marlins picked him up has been impressive to see, and he gets that win in the finale for the Marlins. But it's definitely a depth problem right now, and I think that went back to even when Cronin, before he had the injuries, just this second half of the season has been a little more of a struggle for him compared to that first half. And so, but like you said, the depth has certainly been an issue for this team, and it's going to make things really interesting when you're facing a Giants team in this series that you're expecting to see their two best starters, and tonight one of the best starters in the National League. So how the Marlins shape up against that and how they'll shape up in the back end of games is going to be really interesting for Skip to see how he handles that.
For sure. Yeah, the graphic does not look very good, my friend. I don't think there's a single guy on there that was on the opening day roster. So that, aside from Cronin. But aside from that, I think that's it.
Yeah, Cronin was, remember, and he got sent down like a couple of days after opening day. And even after that,
and Soriano. I think Soriano was on the opening day roster too.
That's right. That's a good memory. I do want to shout out John McMillan. People, they're not paying attention to John McMillan, but I am, and I'm fascinated by him. So he was yet another waiver claim that they picked up from the Royals about a month ago. Even off the top of my head, I think it's a sub-3 ERA to this point, and the underlying stuff looked good as well. Is a fastball slider guy, and the slider in particular has been almost unhittable so far. One hit total off of the slider so far this entire season. He's an adjustment that he's made is he's throwing it a lot more than his fastball, even though he has mid-90s heat, that his slider and his ability to locate it exactly where you want to, where it's just a little bit off the plate. He's able to get some chases. He's able to get some generous called strike calls. His most memorable moment as a Marlin so far was the play where he threw a ball like down the left field line. He tried to throw a ball to third base, and there was nobody covering third base. And it was pretty embarrassing. And it led to a couple unearned runs right there. That being said, I think everything else, when he's actually in a pitching situation, it's been really impressive so far. He has, as you see right there, he has all of his minor league options still to go. At this point, he has made enough of an impression that I think there's a very good chance that he sticks around this organization into the offseason and that he comes into spring training as somebody that is going to have a very legitimate chance to earn a spot, a permanent spot in this bullpen. So John McMillan, keep an eye on him. To this point, he just hasn't pitched in all that many high leverage situations, understandably so, because he just had no track record whatsoever at the big league level as of a month ago. Down the stretch of this year, depending on how much more time Anthony Bender misses and Andrew Nardi pitches, I think we'll see John McMillan tested in some of those high leverage situations. And I would not be surprised if he has success. He's somebody that when I'm watching these games, and most of these games the Marlins are not winning, and most of them they're not close to winning, that McMillan is still like, he's showing some interesting stuff to me. I think that is the latest example of a really shrewd waiver claim that the Marlins have made that could turn into something more.
Yeah, it kind of feels like those top 4 guys in that graphic, they're kind of feel like not a lock, I would say, but definitely high chance that they stick Fauché, Tinoco, Cronin, and McMillan. Definitely feel like they have a shot to stay. But Alex, talk to us a little bit about the bullpen, man. I mean, definitely feels like it's been a rough go for them lately. You know, they at one point this was a bullpen that was top 3 in F4, even top 2. You know, they were just behind the Cleveland Guardians, who have the best bullpen in baseball. And I think they may have fallen off a little bit. I think they're still probably top 5, top 10, just, you know, because they have been, for the most part, fairly consistent. You still have guys like Fauché and Cronin who have yet to allow a home run, for example. So definitely some positives, but I mean, injuries have just been horrible for this team this year.
Well, yeah, injuries have been the story of the entire season, because then when Tanner Scott goes and Brian Hoeing goes and Huáscar Brasban goes, you think, well, okay, this is a chance for Andrew Nardi and Anthony Bender to show off how good they can be, and now they're both hurt. Now you've got a situation where Calvin Fauché is your closer, and Calvin Fauché is a great pitcher, but after Calvin Fauché, who else do you have as a high leverage guy? And what stinks about the high leverage situations is the Marlins are such that they're not really in a whole lot of high leverage situations. They're usually getting blown out. There's just a lot of guys that are performing pretty well in low and medium leverage situations. That's why I think that they should all, whoever returns next year, should get a hard look in spring training to see what role they're going to play. Unfortunately, right now, it's just a mash unit of guys that are just being plugged into random situations here and there and just seeing what sticks. And Skip's doing the best job that he can to figure out who should go where, because these are a bunch of guys that aren't supposed to be doing any high leverage spots. Like, none of the guys that are in the bullpen tonight came into this season with hopes that they would be in high leverage spots, at least not from the Marlins. The pitchers themselves hoped that they would be in high leverage spots. The Marlins had never had any intention of any of these guys being in high leverage spots. So I think that's the story of this bullpen since the deadline, was just it's a bunch of just guys that they're trying to figure out where to even put them.
Yeah. Well, I got rid of Kevin so that I could deviate from our regularly planned stream itinerary in order to plug a fantasy football league that I have set up for our super subs right here. And I bring this up because our draft is coming up on Sunday. 12-team league. I have 10 teams in here so far for our super subscribers only. And I want to get it filled up before Sunday. I want to finalize the roster that we have here tomorrow. So the details are up on the site if you haven't seen them already. And at this point, people could just reach out to me directly at whether it's on the site through our messaging system or on Twitter at Real Eli, or you could email me or whatever way, just to let me know that you want to join this, because we're giving out prizes to the top 3 finishers, including having some of your super subscription paid for in the future if you finish in the top couple of spots of this league. And I am probably not going to finish very highly myself. So I think all the top finishers are going to be those of us that are actually supporting what we do at Fish on First right there. 12-team league, 10 spots filled right now. If you are interested, I could downsize it if at the last minute if I absolutely have to, but I have faith that the people watching this and that support what we do want to play some fantasy football as well with us right here. So again, contact me if you haven't already, in order just to fill out this league so that we're all set to go on Sunday as our draft gets underway. Now that we brought Kevin back, we can return to our regularly scheduled programming. We'll just hop right into prediction time, shall we?
Yep, let's do it.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to like toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
We need to use the Alex Ferrer version of that one.
Yes, I made an alternate edit of that for Alex Ferrer as well, who has some of his own talents when it comes to jinxing players, reverse jinxing them, we should say. Look at our leaderboard right here. Daniel Rodriguez, who is up in wherever, I'm blanking right now on where Florida is. Gainesville, that's right. So he's out in Gainesville right now, not on the show. A 2-point lead over the next closest competitor here in prediction time-wise. A lot of people picked up points in the last series because it was a split down the middle. And I could say that all the predictions I've received so far, with few exceptions, almost everybody is riding with the Giants in this upcoming series right here. You could understand why the Marlins have not won a series in more than a month. Maybe that has gone beneath people's radars. But they've been competitive. They've been up and down. There have been some really resilient wins and surprising ones. But all things considered, 8 straight series they've either lost or split coming into this one. So it would have to be a pretty big change of their recent trajectory in order for that to happen. I did want to throw in a twist to this prediction time because coming up tomorrow, for most teams, the college football season gets underway, including my Miami Hurricanes and the Florida Gators. So because I think we have a lot of people in the audience that have some interest or familiarity with those teams, we wanted to include our game winner picks for Miami versus Florida coming up tomorrow, in addition to our usual prediction time thing for the actual Marlins themselves. At the end, pick who you think is going to win between Miami and Florida right there. That it's not going to count. It's just for fun. Not going to count points wise. Just just a test of your football acumen that is off the record right here. And now I think because the way that I set up my audio this time, I can turn on the music and it won't actually interrupt my voice. It won't give me the weird robot voice thingy right here. Assuming this worked. We can hop right into this. Oh, no, we cannot because I want to set up the background, of course. There we go. We usually start with Kevin. This time we will start with Zach right here. So your series predictions for the Marlins and then the Miami-Florida game. Go ahead.
I'm going to go Giants 2 out of 3. I think the Marlins are probably catching the toughest part. Not probably, but they just are catching the toughest part of this Giants rotation. Blake Snell's been unbelievable. 1.72 ERA in his last 5 with 45 strikeouts in just 31 innings. I think Eddie Cabrera could have a nice start for the Fish, but I like Giants 2 out of 3. And I like the Canes to beat the Gators tomorrow, 23-17. It's going to be a great game this morning.
So your MVP is Snell?
Blake Snell, yes.
God damn.
Kevin, you got to pivot.
Yeah, I kind of do, but I'm gonna stick with my prediction. Giants take 2 out of 3. Blake Snell is my series MVP, and I'm gonna take the Canes beating the Gators. Unfortunately, but yes.
Alex Krutchik, let's hear from you on this.
All right, I'm gonna go against the grain here, and I'm gonna go Marlins will finally take 2 out of 3, and I think the MVP is going to be Otto Lopez. As for the UF Miami game, I'm an FSU fan. This is hard. Is Leonard Hankerson still on the Hurricanes? I'm gonna go with the Hurricanes over the Gators, and I think the MVP will be those who do not watch the game.
Leonard Hankerson, that was my day. I remember seeing Leonard Hankerson play in person for the Canes. I had the Marlins winning this series and breaking that drought of victories going back for the last month or so, taking 2 out of 3 from the Giants. I think people are overrating the Giants. They might be better than the Marlins in a vacuum, and certainly the way that the pitching lines up for them is very imposing. That being said, anything can happen over the course of a weekend series. I think the Marlins are going to finish off this West Coast trip on a high note with Jonah Bride winning MVP, continuing to ruin everybody's dreams of a Davison De Los Santos call-up. Jonah Bride is just too good to take out of the lineup, too good to put on the bench. He's going to have some timely hits during the course of the series that make him the most impactful guy overall. And then for the football game itself, Miami versus the Gators. I've been through this before. With few exceptions, the Canes get overhyped heading into the series, and I get my expectations a little bit too high, but I have made that adjustment, and I have learned, and the best thing that I can do for my own well-being is to suppress those expectations and to fear the worst. So I am going to predict that the Gators win this one up, and I guess it's an upset, a slight upset against the Canes in week 1, and that Miami starts the series 0-1, and we'll see if they can bounce back from that later in the season.
Alrighty, we'll wrap it up here then. From Fish on First, late night with the Fish, whatever you want to call it. We'll be back on, I want to say for Tuesday. 2 games set against the Nationals.
Yes.
And then we have 4 against the Phils. So from Eli, Zach, Krutchik, myself, we will see you guys on Tuesday. And happy college football watching to all of you. Go Canes, whatever. Go Gators, go Panthers. We'll see you guys all on Tuesday. Peace out and go Fish.
Have a wonderful evening.
Let's